countdown to the last comic shop in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Hey, it is now time for the last comic shop podcast.
That is right. We are opening up the shop to newbies to help them find their way underneath this comic book tent, and I at least have some energy.
There we go. And we're keeping the lights on for the oldies with the energy to help them unlock those untold tales of all the terrible things that have come before that help pave the way for all the cool stuff we have now.
Yeah. I mean, that's why I really didn't have a lot of, I don't want to say enthusiasm, but this book is pretty serious this week, guys. Like, we picked a pretty serious one to pair with our movie. I'm the host with the most, Andy Larson. I'm joined by Chad Smith and Jay Scott. And we are doing a movie review later on in today's program. It's the next in the MCU extravaganza that is all these movies. It's the Captain America New World Order, which I actually enjoyed quite a lot. I threw it out to my fellow co-hosts, and I said, we can either do a Sam Wilson book, or we can do a Red Hulk book. And they came back and said, neither! We're not doing either of these. And we're actually going to do an Isaiah Bradley story. And so, which one are we doing, Chad?
So we are doing Truth, Red, White, and Black, which was a 7-issue comic book series written by Robert Morales and drawn by Kyle Baker. Published out of Marvel in 2003.
I did not realize it was that long ago, to be blunt. I know that it was a book that I'd been wanting to read for many years now, but I thought it was a much later release. I thought it was 2010 or something like that. So to find it was, right outside of what I want to call the dark days of comics in the late 90s, early 2000s when I wasn't reading.
See, I see this as part of the comeback, the post-Kevin Smith Daredevil. The Marvel Knights era where Marvel was going out and they were experimenting with stuff. And it was the comeback out of the bankruptcy days. But Marvel was taking risks left and right. Things like Punisher Max. They gave Spider-Man to JMS and he was doing great things with it.
Yeah, don't call it a comeback. They've been here for years.
Well, J.A., one thing that's also been around for years on this show is our 10-cent synopsis. And so what happens in Truth, Red, White, and Black?
Well, you had mentioned the dark days of Marvel. This story really sort of comes out of the dark days of American history and follows very closely with the Tuskegee syphilis study, which, if you don't know, was something that happened between 1932 and 72 in the United States, where a group of 400 African-American men with syphilis were part of a government study, and the government didn't bother to tell them that they had syphilis, and they were going to study the effects of syphilis on this. So using that sort of as a starting point, this tale is about how the super soldier serum that was put into Captain America, into Steve Rogers, was developed. And the U.S. government, with the help of some very racist people and Nazis.
It's always the Nazis.
Yes, especially when you've got World War II and Cap involved. The story tells how the super soldier serum was developed very much like this Tuskegee study. They took a group of African Americans and were just injecting them willy-nilly, and with some pretty horrible results. They inject this one guy with too much serum, and he expands and blows up like a balloon and then pops pretty graphically. And so ultimately there are 7 soldiers who have completed the study, and they send them off to war on suicide missions, basically because they want to get rid of them now. And they're thrown in the hold of a ship to go over to Europe, and that's an allusion to the Middle Passage. And their wives and significant others are told that they're killed, and it's all pretty dour. But when they originally wrote this, it was supposed to only be 6 issues. So the first 6 issues, it's a hard read. It's interesting. It's a great story, but it's not the easiest one. The 7th issue, which the editors kind of said, we need one more issue, and Cap gets involved. And that has a bit more of an uplifting ending, I think was needed after the first 6. But it's basically the story of a group of African Americans and how they were taken advantage of by the U.S. government.
Yeah. But it's also kind of a little bit of a hopeful story in the fact that you do get the Cap kind of coda at the end, in which Cap goes searching for the truth, holds the people accountable for doing these terrible things, kind of makes you feel like, all right, somebody might eventually stand up and say this was wrong and make amends for things that were wrong. But also the fact that Isaiah Bradley, who ends up being, I don't want to say the first Captain America, because it seems like Steve Rogers also has the serum at the same time that he puts on the costume. But another Captain America serving in World War II, fighting in this concentration camp, destroying, Mengele's, horrific research on the Jews and concentration camps, this medical awfulness. He's a hero. He's a hero. And I wanted to ask Chad real quickly, because I was a little bit fuzzy on the timeline. This particular story, when did it come out in comparison to Young Avengers? Because eventually we meet Isaiah Bradley in Young Avengers, because Patriot is his grandson. Eventually he gets the super soldier serum there.
Yeah, no, Young Avengers, which is awesome, by the way, from Alan Heinberg and Jim Chung. That showed up around 2005. And so you are right, Andy, there are connections there where Isaiah Bradley's grandson, Eli, is Patriot, and eventually gets a blood transfusion with his grandfather's blood and all of those things. But yeah, that's something. If it doesn't make our recommendation list later on, it should. Young Avengers. It's awesome stuff.
Oh, yeah.
I just
could have read that.
I got it wrong. So this isn't the creation of the super soldier serum. They're trying to recreate it because it had been lost. Remember when Cap was made, then the scientist is killed and his notes were burned. So they're trying to recreate Cap because the original stuff had gotten lost in the fire when the Nazi secret agents attacked the facility and killed the doctor. And
thank goodness. Otherwise, the outcry when people thought, they were going to let black people be Captain America first.
Well, there was when the series came out, the first couple of issues before they sort of clarified the timeline, there was a big uproar among many who were like, "Well, you're messing with the sacred Cap timeline. How can you say that these guys came before Cap? And was he the first Captain America?" There's a lot of this unnecessary angst.
Absolutely, for fictional characters.
Yeah. Fanboys are the worst. They are the worst. Well, I kind of gave a little bit of my initial thoughts here about this particular story, that at times it was very upsetting. I don't know how else to say it. It's serious. It's a serious story, and it really does upset you that folks would be treated in this terrible way, and that they showed a lot of courage and they showed a lot of determination and just ultimately, I don't know, were worthy of the Captain America mantle in some ways, because these guys were like, it was thrust upon them. It was just terrible reasons why they were given these powers, but ultimately they did do good things with them, especially destroying that concentration camp. But
let me jump in here. So the first thing we haven't addressed yet is the Kyle Baker arc. And so Kyle Baker, I had known his work from a run on Plastic Man he did in DC, I want to say circa like 2003 or so, that is just bonkers fun. It's super cartoony. Absolutely, like, it feels like a cartoon. Like, even whenever you see cartoons translated into comic books and you're like, that's not right, that's not what it's supposed to look like, that's what his art looked like the Kyle Baker art to me. And so when we start off this story, you get this high level of cartooning in what is, as Andy was describing, a very serious story. And for a minute or two, it doesn't seem like it quite fits. But then things are so bad, and it's so like going into the intricacies of war and people experimenting on each other. And I think back to their commanding officer making the regiment with these soldiers wade through the sewage and just the worst possible scenarios, because he knows these guys have to be ready. They can't be surprised by somebody or something that's terrible or something that sticks. They have to be ready to face anything and everything because they're going to be put on the front lines. They are going to be thrown to the wolves there. But the dichotomy, I guess, between the art and the story itself, it did take me a minute to get used to on that front.
I hadn't seen Kyle Baker's art before, and it reminded me, especially in the context of this book, a lot of Archibald Motley's work, which was a very famous painter from the Harlem Renaissance and the Chicago Black Renaissance, and did a lot of paintings of jazz musicians and was known for his use of color and use of composition. And a lot of this art mimicked that, and some of the faces as well. And I didn't know if that was on purpose or if that was just me reading into it. But once I sort of made that connection in my mind, I appreciated the art more, because at first I was also thrown by the level of cartooning. It was very cartoony for something that's such a serious matter.
Yeah, no, I never got over the cartooning. I'm going to be very blunt. I never got over the cartooning. This was almost a tale of two books for me, in which the story of this regiment of black soldiers injected with the super soldier serum, again, at the time, Black Americans, they weren't allowed on the front lines. They weren't allowed to be with other white soldiers in World War II. So they were given the crap jobs, literally, like digging latrines and things like that, because, again, they were looked at as, an inferior race. The humanity that they have, the courage that they display in these stories, the obstacles that they overcome, they refuse to be beaten down. Like it was something that was really powerful to me, but I could never take that particular serious topic and then look at the art and say, this is who I would have picked for this particular story. I honestly probably would have gone with somebody that maybe had more of a photorealistic perspective on the story, because I feel like that would have added to the gravitas of what was going on. I mean, maybe it would have been a lot more dark, but it would definitely have fit the more historical context for me.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that the story is grotesque enough. There's so many terrible things going on here, things that are hard to look at. And you have this guy, Kyle Baker, who has this style, which I'll be honest, I did not realize he was a black man from his previous work. But that's just me, living inside my own shells here. But I think that might have been too much. I think of some of those Punisher books that were coming out at the time, a John McCrae style art where all the oozes and blisters and boils are present, and I don't know if I'd be able to handle that. I think the cartooning helps me to stay in it because it's far enough gone, but at the same time, Baker is a really great cartoonist, so it keeps things relatable, keeps the story moving by taking a step away from the reality. I think that does make it more palatable, just because if it's too close, it's too easy to look away, like we would do with so many other things.
But it is a good point. I think that's why you needed that issue 7. You needed a bit of uplift at the end, because it's one of those stories that you read and you get angry. You get angry because of the injustice more than anything else. At least I did. It was the injustice that was heaped upon these men and Isaiah Bradley. He's thrown in jail and he comes back because he stole Captain America's uniform and they were going to give him life in prison for that. I mean, come on. And he ends up, having severe disabilities because of the super soldier serum wasn't quite perfected yet. All of the PTSD was left untreated, and he got a presidential pardon.
You were talking about
I didn't understand that. Why was the pardon?
Well, didn't they explain that at the end of issue 7? Because of the pardon, he wasn't going to get.
Oh no! Yes. Because they sworn to secrecy.
There you go.
So he couldn't get any treatment for this thing because the experiment was secret. It doesn't exist in the government books, so the government's not going to treat something that the government didn't do, even though the government did it.
Yeah, there's the panel that talks about how the VA reinstated Isaiah's regular benefits, but it won't recognize damage done by a program that never existed since everything was secret. the irony, like the one piece of help that he gets dooms him for reasons I would never. There's so many things in here that I would never understand, but at the same time, I totally buy that reality is this terrible, and like, oh, it's just heartbreaking. Like anytime like something's close to being put right for this poor family. Think about his wife. She had to go to his funeral and looks inside the casket and be like, man, it was really rough out there. It turned my husband into a charred up skinny white guy.
Yeah.
Like, there's devastation throughout.
I was curious about that, actually, that whether or not that was a real thing. If there was an explosion or something, they would divvy, like, was that a thing in World War II?
They would divvy up the remains just to expand, so it wasn't part of the story where they were trying to throw off a different dead guy just so the coffin had weight or something. It was the idea that if there's a mass explosion where there's all these casualties, and this is, World War II, they don't have a DNA testing at this point yet, so they would divvy up the corpse remains so that everyone would get something to bury, even though if they didn't know. I can't imagine that was true. I don't know. I mean, they have dental records.
So
they all had dog tags.
We tried to put them back together.
It made me want to look it up and see if that was actually a real thing. Because again, a lot of this stuff, like, it's too horrific to think to, like, wow, it's just, the one thing that I want to say before we get too far is, like, I wish, believe it or not, that I could have stayed in this world a little bit longer. And that may sound creepy. It may sound like I'm a glutton for punishment. But some of these characters that end up getting the super soldier serum, like you've got the hard-nosed sergeant that served in World War I, been around the block. That's Lucas Evans. And he ends up running the squad of the folks that got the super soldier serum and survived. You've also got Maurice, who comes from this family, well-to-do and wealthy, and he's, put on trial for being a communist, and then he's told to serve in the army, and he ends up getting the super soldier serum as well. They were all really interesting characters, and I would have liked to have seen them go on some missions, despite the fact, how they got the super soldier serum was terrible, the horrific things they had to endure. They were actually genuinely really good characters.
Yeah, I do like that whole first issue really fleshes out some of the 7 initial super soldier serum candidates. As you said, I mean, the sergeant is about to eat his gun because he's dealing with PTSD from World War I when the radio announces that Pearl Harbor has been attacked. And so the U.S. is entering into World War II, and so he now has something to save himself. And even Isaiah Bradley gets this sort of fleshed out story, but not just him, his wife.
So I definitely agree with you guys both that the characters were really well fleshed out. You felt like these were normal people, with normal foibles and normal goals and aspirations, and they definitely felt real. And I also agree that having half of them get wiped out in that first mission, that felt too soon. You wanted to see more action with these guys. But then I also think of all my favorite war stories that I've read. And this is a war story. They're not always convenient, and, that's not how war goes. It's full of terrible surprises, and some guys aren't going to make it. And so at the same time, the shock of that happening, like, I think that fits. So I'm going to play both sides of the fence here, where I agree these are really great characters to waste, just like so many people we send to war. They come to too soon of an end because of the scenarios they're put in. So, yeah.
I just, at times, like, it almost seemed like Isaiah until, like, he becomes one of the last ones and he's sent over on that one last mission and he steals the Captain America costume and does the mission. He almost seems like he's not even the most interesting.
Yeah, he's not the main character.
He just seems like he's the family man character, like the family man trope character, like the guy that's got a wife and kid back home. He's reading comic books behind the... If I was going to say, like, who became the Black Captain America, it would have been Lucas, because, like, Lucas was all about honor, and he was a real patriot. Stood up for people. Like, you meet him in the pool hall, and he got knocked down from, like, captain to sergeant because he stood up against injustice and was punished for it. Like, he seems like the guy.
It's a war story, dude. It's who's left.
Yeah, it is true. But it's sad. I just wish that, again, I wish I could have seen a couple more missions with these guys, because I ended up genuinely liking them. I would have wished to have spent a little bit more time with that, despite the stories with Captain America and Steve Rogers, because it was nice. It was a coda. It made me feel better about things in the end, gave me a little bit of a happy ending. But, like, if I was going to weigh those two things, I would rather take more stories with these characters that were really well developed and see them, again, go on a couple missions. That would have been my druthers.
It was really cool to see Isaiah Bradley in that Captain America costume, though.
Oh, yeah.
Seeing him on that mission and seeing those Jack Kirby-esque poses, and, you know, seeing a black man be able to be part of something that big. And I did love all the Nazis, and they're like, you know, we respect you more. It's secretly double dealing behind their back. And
right. The way he stares down Adolf Hitler, man, that's the best.
And in his answer, when Adolf says, "Well, you know, we will come fight for us, and we will free all black men," he's like, "No, my wife would kill me."
Yeah. Well, maybe he was the one that should have, in the end. Again, he is the everyman. But one thing that we want to finish off this particular segment with is our ratings of Truth, Red, White, and Black. And that rating scale comes from J. Scott. So J8, what do we got on this week's show?
1 out of 4 super soldiers.
Ooh, there you go. Well, let's start off with you then, sir. How many super soldiers are you giving this?
Yeah, I struggled with this. I went back and forth. Did I like the art? Did I think it was too cartoony? Did I think the story was sometimes a bit too over the top? Like, some of these bad guys were really, I mean, they were like Nazis in Ku Klux Klan uniforms with swastikas. I mean, they were just like horrible people. But then you read some of the back matter, and you read about like the Tuskegee study and some of these things, and it was pretty horrible too. At that point, you're like, well, maybe he kind of has a point. If it was just those 6 issues, I probably would have given it a 3.5. But that, I really, really loved that Coda issue with Cap. So much for that one image where Captain America goes and meets Faith, Isaiah's wife, and he goes into their home, and he's waiting while she goes to find out where Isaiah is, and he's standing in front of this wall covered with photos of Isaiah and like a who's who of Black America. Muhammad Ali and Richard Pryor and Malcolm X,
Nelson Mandela, Michael Jackson, Quincy Jones. Is that Flavor Flav? That's Flavor Flav.
That's Flavor Flav.
2 Live Crew. We got some Arthur Ashe.
No, not 2 Live Crew.
Yeah, Public Enemy. Come on. Chuck D.
So I could identify almost all those people.
Okay.
Except for that white dude in that image.
John Lennon?
No, that was John and Yoko. The other white dude in
Bono's there.
No, in the top right corner.
Robert Redford.
Like
Robert Redford. There you go.
Robert Redford. Next to Angela Davis. Okay. That hit me right in the feels. I really liked it. So that elevates it, I think. It's not quite a 4. I'm going to give it a 3.9.
There you go. I did love, and this is me being an ignorant white guy, when they talk about one of the reasons the Nazis were so interested in the first place was because of the way the black people were able to share information. And that's why they were chosen for some of this, because there was that underground system that they had. They're like, oh, we want to use that. We want something like that. It's just, there's so many things at play in society that I don't understand. And then you get a book like this that just digs deeper and uncovers some of those things. And some of it might be pure hooey and some of it might be not. You know, these are fictitious stories, but some of them are so grounded in reality. It's like, yeah, I could see all this happening. I could see in real life today, you see so many people doing so many terrible things for whatever reason. I don't know. This deals with a lot. And as cartoony as it is, it felt real. All the characters, even the most over the top ones, even that the skeezy collector guy who
Yeah.
is there talking to Captain America and saying all these horrible racist things. Like, those people are out there still, and it's tough to be confronted with it and to see like that it's out there, and I don't know, putting it to paper almost makes it feel more real, and it should be put to paper and it should be brought to light, but it's all just, it's hard. It is hard. With that said, I am going to side with Jay, where sometimes the art style didn't do it for me. It might have been too cartoony or a little too unfinished. Sometimes that was a feature and sometimes not so much. So I don't know. I'm not going to go the full 4, but I think I'm going to say 3.75. I do think they're great comic books. I definitely think they're worth reading. I think I'm better for having had this experience. But sometimes there were characters that were, tough to differentiate. Sometimes there were scenarios where it wasn't always entirely clear what's going on. And I think the story was great, but like I said, sometimes the art could have been better, even with the contrasting style.
I think I'm going to go a little bit lower than both of you guys. This is a 3.5 for me, and it is really, truly because of not just the art. As I said, I think I was the most critical of this art. I would have rather have seen something that was, again, a little bit more realistic, a little less cartoony, a little bit more polished. I mean, again, you're dealing with some really powerful folks here. Like, again, these, Lucas Evans and Maurice and Isaiah Bradley, they were truly powerful dudes. And I don't think you really get that. Maybe a little bit in issue, 5, where he goes into the concentration camp and he liberates it. I think that you get some of that heroic majesty that in some ways these guys deserved. I get it. Sometimes the cartooniness and the good, it's ugly, and it's ugly on purpose. Like, again, I really was a fan of how ugly that dude in the prison, that super fan racist dude was. Like, he was drawn like a troll that lived underneath a bridge. That's art imitating how somebody's soul really is. And so I applaud that kind of stuff. But again, not only did I feel like the art didn't fit the story, I thought the story was too short. I would have loved to have this been 12 issues, more time spent with the regiment of Black Captain Americas. Let those stories and those characters breathe. I get it, it's war, but it's also fiction. And it would have been just nice to see these characters, I don't know, just get more heroic moments. Because, again, they were deserving of it. But I still think, again, it's a really great book to read, coming on the heels of last week's episode when we did March. Again, this is another awesome book that, regardless of whether it's Black History Month or not, you should just read this, especially if you're coming out of the, Captain America movie. But yeah, it could just be a little bit better. In any case, we've got more or less Comic Shop right after these commercial breaks with our recommendations and a movie review coming up. So stay tuned for that.
Yeah, I mean, you could read this after watching that Craven, because that was hell too.
Looking to save money on your collectible supplies? Whether it's comics, cards, sports memorabilia, or miscellaneous pop culture bric-a-brac, make sure to use promo code LCSPOD to get 10% off your orders at bcwsupplies.com. Not only does it get you a discount on BCW's already low prices, but using LCSPOD at checkout is an amazing way to show support to the Last Comic Shop podcast, the most incredible comic book podcast on the airwaves. So if you are in need of collectible supplies, head out to bcwsupplies.com and use promo code LCSPOD today. That's promo code LCSPOD. Cheers!
This message is from the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs. Veterans, do you want military history and your stories of service preserved? The Library of Congress Veterans History Project collects, preserves, and makes accessible the first-hand accounts of veterans who served from World War I through today. Make your story heard. To learn more and become involved, visit loc.gov/vets.
All right, we're back with more Last Comic Shop, and it is now time for recommendations. Yes, that time of every single show where we make you wait for a movie review, because I know that's what you showed up for. I know you folks. You watch the movies, you go see the MCU movies, then we're like, oh, we've got a movie review, and you're like, well, I guess I'll listen to The Last Comic Shop this week. Well, we're going to make you listen to other comic books that you can pick up in addition to Truth, Red, White, and Black at your local comic book shop today. And we're going to go ahead and start off with Chad Smith. So, Chad, what do you got for us this week?
So I've never made a secret of my affinity for diving through the buck bins and trying to find some of that cool stuff out there that I may have missed the first time around. And so I actually stumbled upon this series a couple of different formats. I got the first issue in single issues, and I found a trade paperback for super cheap, and then I found a magazine that has the first 2 issues of The Nom, written by Douglas Murray with art by Michael Golden. It is the realistic portrayal of war. Larry Hama, the guy behind G.I. Joe, was the editor on this book. They were doing a more realistic take to try and find some meaning out of what had happened during the Vietnam era. This came out circa 1988. And so I read the first 4 issues in this trade paperback, which can be a little bit tough to get a hold of these days. And then I also was able to flip through the magazine, which has Michael Golden's artwork, but it's just the line art. But it was so interesting to go through and look at just the different ways that comic books can work. And the Nom comic has almost like a European style coloring to it, where you have a lot of that monochromatic backgrounds, or, characters are shades of a certain color. And seeing the impact that color has was super cool. And then going back and seeing the line work that Michael Golden does in the black and white magazine version, where it's blown up a little bit, like, that was also super cool. And so, at the end of the day, if you can get your hands on copies of The Nom, I highly recommend it. The new recruit, as he goes and acclimates, and they have, 2 pages or so that have all the different terms that you're going to use, like an index or a glossary here to figure out what all the different acronyms and all the different sayings mean. But it feels like you're dropped in the thick of it. And as the new recruits become more seasoned and are shown the ropes, and to see all the different players and all the different crooked people in the government, and the guys that become the top brass, and what they did to get there. And it's so nuanced. It's just super interesting. And then, as we were talking about Kyle Baker taking that more cartoony style, Michael Golden actually blends his super detailed work with a cartoony style of sorts. You get a cross between a Kyle Baker and a Todd McFarlane in this book, where you get the cartoony figures, but at the same time everything else is so meticulous. It's super cool, super interesting. I really want to get you guys to read this on the show at some point.
I mean, who knows, Chad? We might read that. I mean, you get picks this year. I mean, are you going to pick that over the Deadpool book? Maybe we'll read
Deadpool
both.
Team Up? The Rob Liefeld send off to the Marvel Universe?
If I make you pick children?
If I have to pick between MASH and Rob Liefeld, I'm going Rob Liefeld every time. Wait till you see Cable's gun. It's so huge. His gun, it's so erect and ready in this book. Blow you away.
Okay.
And everyone else.
J.A., you got a recommendation. What do you got this week?
I do. I'm going to recommend Miles Davis and the Search for Sound by Dave Chisholm. Now, this is a 150-page graphic novel that follows Davis through 4 decades of his musical innovation, and it's all centered around his quest to find this mysterious sound that he heard on a moonlit country road as a child. This book was researched and crafted by David Chisholm, who holds a doctorate in jazz trumpet from the Eastman School of Music. And it is drawn, I mean, some of these pages look like they straight off the cover of Bitches Brew, if you know that Miles Davis album. Just incredible colors, incredible drawings. He uses a lot of Miles Davis's own words that he took from tapes and from his autobiography to tell this story of Miles Davis. So if you are a big jazz fan, if you are a big Miles Davis fan, this is a must read, I find.
Yeah. No, Dave's somebody that we talk to quite a lot on social media. I think we should have him on the show sometime. I know that when this book first came out, we got a reading copy of it, and it was something that I really enjoyed. So I'm really glad that you recommended this on this week's show, because he's an awesome, awesome artist. Speaking of awesome artists, another great artist that unfortunately isn't with us anymore is the late, great Steve Dillon. And so my recommendation comes from his archives of work. It is a 6-issue miniseries called Supreme Power Nighthawk. It came out of the Max series way back in the those days of Marvel, and written by Daniel Way, who wrote some Wolverine, of course. This is just another play on the old Batman Joker war. Except instead of Batman, you've got Nighthawk, who is pretty much the stand-in for Batman in a lot of stories. And you've got this other character, I think, who's just called the Clown. You take the Joker and you really ratchet him up, and you really show what a character as psychotic as the Joker is and could be capable of. And you put that in a realistic storyline, or semi-realistic storyline, and you can see, again, just the graphic nature of what that war between these two characters would be, especially when you've got this Nighthawk character he doesn't have Batman's code against killing. No, he'll flat out kill people. It's, again, two people that are really, really disturbed going up against each other. But I really loved this book just simply because of, again, the Steve Dillon art. And plus the fact that, Nighthawk has just such an interesting history in Marvel Comics. He was originally a Roy Thomas creation. They put him in the Squadron Supreme as, these are the stand-ins for the DC characters. He had the really under...
What does he look like?
Oh, it depends on which one you look at. The one that's in the Supreme Powers, it kind of looks like Night Owl from Watchmen. Yeah. So
I never heard of him.
Most people are more familiar with the kind of the red, white, and with big yellow bird on his chest from Squadron Supreme or Defenders. But they make a lot of great books about Kyle Richardson, and this is just another really, really good one. So, in any case, we'll be right back with more of The Last Comic Shop right after these commercial breaks with our review of Captain America New World Order. So if you've been waiting with bated breath, stick around for that.
Have you ever been reading through a stack of comics and thought, maybe I should see what that Arkham Asylum game is all about? Or been playing Marvel vs. Capcom and felt like you were at a real disadvantage since you didn't know who half the characters were? Well, Play Comics is the show for you. I'm Chris, and each episode we take a look at video games based on comic properties and how well they stick to that source material. So whether you know the comics and want to know how all those games work, or you know the games and want to find out where all this craziness came from, go check out Play Comics at playcomics.com or wherever you find your favorite podcasts.
When 6 teenagers are caught in a devastating storm, they wake up the next day with unimaginable abilities. Now the same storm that gave them their powers has awoken an ancient evil set on destroying their home and the world at large. And it's up to them to stop it. In a world without heroes, they're here to kick some ass. Read Born a Storm, a new ongoing series for free at Born a Storm Comic on Instagram. Hashtag Born a Storm.
And we're back, ladies and gentlemen, as we enter into this a brave new world, Aldous Huxley style. Oh, wait, no, Captain America style. No, the Hulk 2, 17 years later style. Whatever. J.A. Scott, why don't you give us the who's-its, and then we'll get to the what's-its of Captain America, Brave New World.
Okay, Captain America Brave New World was directed by Julius Ona on a screenplay by no less than five professional writers. Just want to point that out when we get into our thoughts on the movie. Rob Edwards, Malcolm Spellman, Dallin Musson, Julius Ona, and Peter Glanz. based, of course, on the Marvel Comics, starring Anthony Mackie as Sam Wilson, Captain America, Danny Ramirez as Joaquin Torres, the new Falcon, Shira Haas as Ruth Bat Seraph, a role that I think probably a lot of it got left on the cutting room floor. Same with Giancarlo Esposito as Sidewinder, and the guy who played Copperhead gets a credit here, and I don't even remember Copperhead being in the movie. Anyways, Isaiah Bradley was replayed by Carl Lumply from the Falcon and Winter Soldier TV show, and Liv Tyler reprised her role as Betty Ross, Tim Blake Nelson as Samuel Stern's leader, and Harrison Ford replacing William Hurt, who passed away in 2022, as Thaddeus Thunderbolt Ross and Red Hulk. You find this man! He took everything! This one-armed man! Oh no, sorry, that's the wrong movie.
No, yeah, you want the Air Force One? Then get off my plane or I'll throw this helicopter at you.
I went to see it with my wife, and she's like, they're on Air Force One. Will he say it? Will he say it? And I was just like, I know you like that movie, but we're watching a different one right now.
Oh, and Bucky Barnes shows up for no apparent reason at all.
Just, hey, let's have this conversation real fast, and then you go away.
Right.
Anyway.
And why is he a senator or a congressman, or he's going to be a congress? When did this happen? Like,
Yeah, we'll find out in Thunderbolts. That's asterisk. Anyway, Andrew, you're the guy who knows what happened, so why don't you fill us in? And we should do a spoiler warning for those folks that haven't seen it. You might want to wait for video. So hit pause and come back in 2 months.
yeah.
And but Andrew's going to give us the 10-cent synopsis of Captain America: Brave New World.
I don't know if it's going to be like 2 months, maybe a month. Maybe this might be a quick turnaround. Regardless, the 10-cent synopsis is as follows. Thunderbolt Ross has been elected as president of these United States of America. And one of his campaign promises was to create a treaty with all the other countries of the world who are trying to get pieces of one of the lasting remnants of the Eternals movie, which was the fact that there's this giant half celestial carcass in the middle of the ocean. It turns out that this celestial carcass is made up of adamantium. So we get the first appearance of that famous metal in the MCU. And as a result of this kind of treaty, he's under a lot of stress. There's a Sidewinder guy who steals the adamantium.
From Japan.
It's from Japan, not China. We'll get to that in a second, too. And then Sam Wilson gets it back. But it turns out the whole thing, everything, was just a scheme by Hulk Villain, the leader. And for those that may not know, he is as smart as the Hulk is strong. That's his gamma power. But the leader basically was trying to trigger Thunderbolt Ross and turning into the Red Hulk. Like that's his whole plan. He's just like, I just want him to get on and then just make a mess.
Not a great plan. Not a great plan.
Half the White House. That's my whole plan. Not to get the adamantium, not to do anything with the adamantium, not to break down, world politics or whatever. I just want to troll Ross until he breaks and starts yelling some stuff on social media. That's true. Captain America stops him, though, by showing him cherry blossoms.
With his Falcon, Black Panther, Ant-Man inspired costume.
Yeah. I mean, he didn't take the super soldier serum, which I actually kind of thought of all of the kind of aspects of Sam Wilson's character was kind of the neatest one. I won't lie, with my initial thought, I liked how Anthony Mackie played off other people. It was fun to see him play off Sebastian Stan for a little while. It was fun for him to play off of Harrison Ford. It was fun to see him play off of Tim Blake Nelson. It was just fun to see him play off of people.
I feel bad for the guy. I mean, he has a lot of charisma and a lot of ability, and just the script.
Yeah. The script that was written by 5 professional script writers.
Wasn't there like massive reshoots for this movie? Massive ones?
Rewrites. Yeah.
all the Giancarlo Esposito scenes were like reshoots that were, pasted into the film later. So I do feel bad once again for Anthony Mackie, just because he is a talented actor with lots of charm. I think Harrison Ford, lots of folks expected him to phone this in. I saw one interview where someone was asking him, are you nervous that the footage of you being the Red Hulk is going to get out there? And Harrison Ford looked at him and then whispered, that's what the money's for. He's not embarrassed by this. He's getting paid handsomely. But yeah, I thought all of the actors did a solid job. I enjoyed Joaquin Torres. Was he brand new here, or had he been in any of the Falcon and Winter Soldier stuff?
He was in the miniseries.
He was in
the TV show.
Falcon and Winter Soldier.
That also was forgettable, so you'll have to forgive me.
How do you mean that was that had the wonderful Daniel Bruhl as Zemo.
That's
dancing.
True. Dance Club. I do remember that. That was good times. But no, so you have this stitched together plot that's supposed to be, there's political intrigue. No, there isn't. There's Harrison Ford popping pills in the beginning of the film, like, oh, don't let people know. And then they gave Anthony Mackie all these 80s action movie lines, like, oh, I guess I'm going to have to do this the hard way. And then they combine that to a sequel from the Hulk movie from 2008, which was 17 years ago.
And not really well received when it came out the first time.
Yeah.
No, but yeah, that's where you get Harrison Ford's character. That's where you get Betty Ross and you get the leader. But then you take out Bruce Banner, because why should he be there to resolve any of these things? It's not like he would be emotionally invested. It was a weird alchemy. And honestly, one of the big themes of the film is that people can change. But quite frankly, I thought that was kind of on the nose. Whenever you take the character actor and change him to a totally different guy, and then you take that actor and then change him into a Red Hulk. I mean, come on, guys. Like I said, a little on the nose.
Speaking of Red Hulk, before we get to JA, I did see this with a bunch of kids, and their take on it was pretty good, but they could have used some more Red Hulk. Because I feel like once Red Hulk showed up, they were like, why wasn't he in the movie the rest of the time? Because they just love to see the Hulk, throw helicopters and smash things. And they were like, could he use more of that guy? Yeah,
more Red Hulk, less World War II recreation between Japan and the United States at this frozen celestial. Seriously, that whole scene was just so stupid. Obviously, Disney doesn't want to piss off China in this emerging market, so they're not going to make China. But China makes a lot more sense standing up to the U.S. wanting to get the adamantium. When was Japan a super? Japan was a superpower in 1945.
That huge dogfight battle.
It's so I was just that I literally found myself looking at my watch, wondering how much longer the movie had, because it's just not good.
Without the super serum, how does Sam Wilson do that stuff?
Yeah,
that's beyond the limits. I was struggling for plausibility here in a movie where his helmet just magically CGI appears and disappears.
Yeah, and he's flying at like Mach 4, Mach 5, catching up to missiles, slicing through airplanes.
I will agree with that too. I mean, there is that one scene in, again, the reshot fight with Sidewinder where he gets, stabbed in the chest and an axe to like the gut. And he comes back and he's just like, here's my Band-Aid.
Kevlar threads in his undershirt.
Yeah, right.
It's not Fruit of the Loom. It's
and he got stabbed a lot. There were like 3 or 4 different stabbings in this movie.
And you know what? It sounds like we're being hypercritical of this movie, right? It does. It sounds like
because we should. It's not good.
It wasn't a very good movie. No. I agree. I mean, Anthony Mackie, he was fun to watch on screen, but you could tell that it had been cobbled together and there's stuff that was left unsaid. They have this character, this Israeli woman who's head of security, but that's it. Then they just drop it. Oh, she's a ex-widow. And then they just drop it. And she disappears for the next hour of the movie and then shows up again, suddenly deciding that she's going to be on the side of Captain America.
Yeah, and what about Isaiah Bradley? Man, talk about some good chemistry. Anthony Mackie and Carl Lumbly had some amazing absolutely amazing chemistry. And in fact, one of my favorite scenes of the entire movie was that scene where Captain America brings the new Falcon in to see Isaiah Bradley for training. And he's just grabbing the big heavy bag and he's like swinging it around. And I thought that we might have gotten to see some scenes with Isaiah Bradley kicking ass as Captain America, like the old man Cap kind of guy.
That was a total missed opportunity not to give him a suit.
Right, grab a shield, do something, as he's jumping out some of these windows and stuff. And he just lock him in solitary confinement, which again gave it some emotional stakes for Anthony Mackie to continue doing what he was doing as he's trying to clear Isaiah Bradley's name, and they kind of had that little like pseudo father-son relationship going on. But it was nice. It was really nice. I thought that both of those actors really, they did bring a little bit of heart and a little bit of emotion to the proceedings, and what otherwise could have been like, I just want to walk around with the cherry blossoms with my daughter. It just kind of seemed creepy at times. Just kind of weird.
They obviously spent a lot of money to get a CGI cherry blossom effect, because there were cherry blossoms all over the place. Every friggin' meeting there was cherry blossoms in the background.
Listen, hey, this is the one chance Marvel has to stomp DC this movie season, and I don't think they're going to do it based on the quality of their movies, since they've lost James Gunn.
Wow. Well, I mean, it's true, though. I mean, you've heard it here. Like, as I said, despite all of these kind of neat things, despite the fact that they gave Barry Windsor Smith a special thanks to, and I had to look it up.
Because Adamantium, I wonder if he got invited to the after party. Am I allowed to go into this? Am I mad at Kevin Feige?
No, he did. That's why his name was in there. That's why Roy Thomas, they did invent Adamantium way back in Avengers 66. I completely forgot that Barry Windsor Smith had done art in kind of the Jack Kirby, John Buscema style, co-created Adamantium, and that's why they gave him the credit. But long story short, lots of people tried. They tried to make a good movie here. I don't know if they succeeded.
Pre-Infinity War, all those phases knitted together. This doesn't feel like it knits with anything, and maybe that's because all the rest, the Doctor Strange movie and the Ant-Man movie, it was all we were all dealing with all these multiple realities and all of the multiverse, and this was not multiverse at all. It's like they've just decided to. I mean, yes, they have problems with their main villain, but it feels like Marvel's given up. Maybe we're just all tired of the multiverse. I'm tired of the multiverse.
What? I remember when the Avengers Infinity War Endgame came out, I was like, oh my goodness, this was such an impressive feat, how they built and built and built. And you could feel in those movies, the coming together of this universe and everything adding to something else. Everything was additive. And even when there were missteps, there was enough there where it's like, oh, well, no, we're getting forward. Now it feels like we're being served up leftovers. When you're pulling characters and plot threads from movies that are best ignored, you're rehashing plots from 17 years ago and expecting audiences to care. That's really tough. And especially whenever you have a script, while it did have 80s action movie lines, it didn't have a lot of heart. There was no fun or joy that you had from those other movies. And so now you're just left with member berries. Like, oh, I remember that character. Oh, I remember this. But there's no real emotional payoff to that stuff. And when they did have chances, like with Isaiah Bradley, they take him off the board for most of the movie.
I was remiss, actually. There was a moment. It's in the end credit scene, which they didn't have a mid-credit scene. They just had an end credit scene. You had to wade through all the CGI effects credits to get to a really nothing burger of an end credit scene with the leader saying that you think you're the only heroes. There are more coming. Yeah, that's the Fantastic Four. That's what we're alluding to.
That and the fact that Robert Downey Jr. will show up as a Tony Stark from an alternate universe who turned into Dr. Doom. It makes sense, and it kind of, again, from the capstone of this multiverse, they had to throw something in about multiverses. Yeah. That's what the audiences are at least used to, whether they like it or not. That's what they're used to from MCU movies over the past couple of years. In any case, one thing that we're hoping that you're used to is our ratings. of these particular movies that we do, and J. Scott's got a rating scale for us for Captain America Brave New World. I keep on wanting to call it New World Order. That's
part of the change. People can change, movie titles can change, nothing matters.
In any case, what's our rating scale?
We're going to go 1 out of 4 rage pills.
Oh, yes. Yes. My wife, again, looked over at me and she's like, did he always know that he was going to be Red Hulk? And I'm like, I actually genuinely don't think he did. I think he was just taking those for his heart. Unlike the comic book in which he was like, no, turn me into a Red Hulk, damn it, because I needs that powers, which I actually thought was a better Thunderbolt Ross, to be blunt. Yeah, any case, we'll start with Chad. Chad, what do you think of this? How many rage pills you giving it?
So the worst thing I can say about this movie is it's fine. It's not good. It's not terrible. It's just fine. Unfortunately, while they had an interesting cast, the Ruth Bat-Saraf as Sabra, she's like supposed to be the Israeli Captain America. Here, she's just another knockoff Black Widow. It's hard for me to get excited about this. I will say, the popcorn bucket. Oh, buddy. Popcorn bucket technology has come a long way. My popcorn bucket I got at the show not only is like the Captain America costume with the Captain America shield lid, it has an extra compartment with wings that pop out. And I didn't even know, you put your straw in there, you're supposed to put your drink inside. But just like this movie, the popcorn bucket, severely off balance. Like even without drinks in the wings, like it's hard to hold and handle, and the lid keeps flying off. And I just feel like the Marvel movies are missing something. And when they're written by committee, when they're reshot so many times, and they lack the energy and the verve or whatever it was that made those early Marvel movies special. Like it's not that they don't have the actors. The stories have run dry. Yeah, this is fine. It's a wait until it shows up on Disney Plus. It's a 2.5. I'm not mad. I'm just disappointed. I expect better out of these Marvel movies.
Compared to some of our previous ratings, that's actually quite generous for you. Because oftentimes with the other MCU movies, when, I don't know, maybe you're just resigned to this stuff. Because before you were just like, what is the MCU doing? I have these expectations. And it was like a rage pill you were taking.
Well, like, Eternals was actively bad. This wasn't bad. It was just written by committee and like stitched together as like a practice exercise, and then they just decided to go with that for their actual movie.
Yeah.
I don't know.
All right. Well, I'll follow up, and I think I'm going to give it a little bit lower. Initially, I was going to give it a 2.5, but our conversation here has kind of convinced me that this is scraping a 2. It really is. It's scraping average. There are some things that you should like about this movie. As I said, I really like the Isaiah Bradley characterization. I like the, basically Sam and him again having this kind of surrogate father-son relationship. That was one of the emotional beats in this that I really enjoyed. Again, Anthony Mackie played off everybody that he was with. He's a great actor. He's very charming. He's very charismatic. I like the fact that he's going to recreate the Avengers. Shrugs, whatever. That's fine. I'm glad that there's a good, solid representation of an awesome Captain America on screen. And Anthony Mackie's doing a great job, so I hope he gets to continue being Sam Wilson on the big screen. It's just Thunderbolt Ross turns into the Red Hulk, right? And I was just like, okay, finally we're going to see some Bruce Banner, right? Like, I mean, the president can't turn into the Red Hulk in front of everybody and, like, the real Hulk not show up to trade punches with him. At least show up for 5 seconds. Because, again,
Because Bucky showed up for 5 seconds. So
yeah, exactly. Why can't we just have just, like, a cameo of him, like, at least watching it on TV and being like, holy crap. This guy that I thought for decades is turned into a Red Hulk. Maybe I should get out there. But no, we cherry blossoms. It was fine. It was fine. Like all of the other MCU movies in recent memory, this is not a good movie on its own. If you take it as just another chapter or episode in an ongoing TV show, though, it's not bad. Again, it's like when you pick up your fourth book in your pull pile, and it's like, oh, okay, I read that on the John. That was fine. I'm okay. It's average. It's a 2. J.A.
Oh, well, to take your analogy, that this is just another episode in a long-running TV show, but this is a TV show that used to be in prime time, and now we're in daytime. So that's where we're going. It's going up against Santa Barbara and As the World Turns.
Wow.
I mean, Anthony Mackie was great. Giancarlo Esposito, an incredible actor, true scenery. Why did they have him in that movie if he's playing like a glorified handyman? I think it's a 2. It was just too inconsistent, up and down, very heavy on the effects that weren't very good, to be honest. I think that, some of the effects were worse than the first Hulk movie, I thought. A lot of blue screen, green screen that didn't have any grounding to it. Nice to see Liv Tyler show up. She's always great. She was there for 5 seconds, cashed a paycheck. But, where's she been for the last 20 years?
Yeah, I wonder what her relationship with Banner is. Does she have
that would have been, we didn't go into any of that stuff. And, to your point about having the Hulk show up, what about She-Hulk? Could have had all the Hulks. And Hulk's son, young Hulk, whatever. What's his name?
He's getting
Hulk's
fitted for a toupee right now. Kind of a tragic haircut.
So it would have been nice to have a bunch of different Hulks, but no. And Abomination, you'd think Abomination. What happened at the end of? I forget what happened to Abomination at the end of that She-Hulk. This is the other thing. I used to have knowledge of all this stuff locked away somewhere, and I've just let it go. There's no point in remembering much of it anymore.
They'll explain it in the dialogue if it's important.
I think that is the most scathing review of the MCU over the past several years that anybody could give anywhere. I used to care about all this stuff, at least to commit it to long-term memory. No, this is all fleeting. This too shall pass.
Yes.
Just barely.
The best part of the movie was the Thunderbolts preview at the beginning of the movie.
And that will be our next movie review coming up in another 2 months at the beginning of Movie Mayhem.
I can already tell you that regardless of how good or bad the movie is, Florence Pugh is getting a 4.
A Florence for Florence.
Oh, there you go. And so make sure that you're checking out The Last Comic Shop. Until then, again, go see Captain America if you want to. Otherwise, wait around for the video. It's fine.
If you're going in the theaters, you can get this unwieldy popcorn bucket, which is fun. But I went to set it down and I dropped it, and boy, did it make a big clang, 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 clang noise. My wings popped open. Thank goodness I didn't have a drink in there.
Oh, Lordy. Remember, rate, review, and subscribe over at www.lastcomicshoppodcast.com. We'll be back next week with more comic book-related goodness. We'll have Mikey Wood on for an episode all about the Justice League International. Yes, blah, ha, ha, all the time. Until then, I'm the host with most, Danny Larson. I'm joined by Chad Smith and J.A. Scott, and we hope that you stay safe. Stay flying. That's right, because you can go at supersonic speeds.
When Hulk had his head, I thought he was going to pop him like a pimple. But no, not Anthony Mackie's brains. Don't do it, Hulk.
Comic Shop Podcast was a 2025 Black Angus production.